Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the MLS UK Show. I'm Henry Hewitt, and as always, I'm joined by
Elliot Holman. I feel like I haven't said that in so long. It's my own name, but here we are. Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah, two guys from the UK, from Manchester. Well, one of us is anyway. I've made a grand return. All the arguments are over. There wasn't any arguments. We are back now doing a series of shows that will have significantly less people watching than the Oasis comeback tour. But anyway, we're back. MLS UK Show. MLS is back. It's back after a summer off. Although we weren't competing against Mexican podcasts. We just had it off to spend with our families. How has your summer been, Elliot? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I'm not on board with Leagues Cup. I'd rather just have the time off, to be honest. Sorry if you missed us too much. What have I been doing? Well, my daughter can now walk, and in the next month or so, you will understand how exhausting that is, and how you're constantly just hunched over, holding his arms. So that's basically been my summer. Barbecues, lots of walking. She's got a trike, so we do lots of dog walks with her on the trike, and I'm actually to be honest, I'm just glad to escape into the studio for half an hour to chat about some soccer ball. How about you?
Arthur is, because he's for about 3 months younger than Aurelia, so he's at that stage you were at 3 months ago, so he's almost walking. He's got a little walker thing, which is got a teddy bear's face on the front of it and speaks in an American accent, so we've just got all day in my house is that, press my nose.
How annoying are the toys? It's honest, the things that are in she had a set of keys when she was 3 months old, like a pretend set of keys, and she'd press the button and it was, I always carry my keys with me when I go out. And then now she's got a book that does head, shoulders, knees and toes, and you press the button and it plays the instrumental of head, shoulders, knees and toes, and she thinks it's great because we go, as soon as she presses it, we go heads, shoulders, knees, but then she presses it again. So it fires it off again. So it's back to the start. Heads, shoulders. We never get to the eyes and the ears and the mouth and the nose because she just starts it over and over and over again. And oh my goodness, that toy's going in the bath very quickly.
I mean, we're quite lucky. You can go to your garage and escape that. My family are downstairs, so at some point during this podcast you may hear some American accent coming from a walker or a book or a toy or whatever else, but it's family life, which we've both become accustomed to. But because of that, it has meant that we have took the summer off. Leagues Cup was a perfect chance for us just to have a little break and then return when MLS returns, and it is back now. Did you catch much of what was going on at the weekend?
To be honest with you, I was really excited that it was back. It felt like it had been so long. Nice to have a little mid-season break. I know the Premier League are looking at that. And I was actually staying with my dad the weekend. I was back home in Norwich, and I'd gone to Carrow Road to watch Norwich play. And it's just lovely, isn't it? It's just nice to round off your evening. I miss the early kickoffs. That's I wish the games were staggered more. You probably had that on your bingo card for this MLS UK Show episode because I say it all the time. Apple TV is fantastic, but just stagger them. I want a feast of football. But it's nice if you happen to be up nice and late, just knowing that MLS is back. MLS is an option. Even when you're staying with your family and everyone else is asleep, you can watch it on volume 1 on your phone under the covers, like kids who used to listen to pirate radio back in the day.
Yeah, you were listening to pirate radio. I was reading those old Goosebumps books with a light on it as well. No, like Elliot said there, if you are a regular listener to the MLS UK show, it will be on your bingo card. Elliot's have a moan about kickoff times. Thanks for everyone, by the way, who has been messaging us over the course of the summer asking where the podcast is. A few of you as well have actually been over to America and have been tweeting us and messaging us with updates, so that's been great to see as well. But if you are an OG listener to the MLS UK show, you will know by now that the majority of episodes, not everyone, but the majority, we do start with the game with a change in name, or the Anton Walks game with a change in name, as we started to call it last year. So, Elliot, this is your time. You've had a whole summer to pick a player. Go on, give it to me.
Okay, so this player is from somewhere I went today, which is in Cheshire, in England. And their middle name, this is significant for later in the show, their middle name is Roy. And
Right.
I will give you the career path and you have to tell me who the player is. So they started their career in 2008 at Crewe Alexandra, which makes sense with the Cheshire link. They then played for Nantwich Town on loan and then moved to Aston Villa in 2012. They've also played for Burnley and they now play in MLS. And I think it's a nice, easy return.
Well, we'll have to wait and see to the end of the episode to see if I have got it right. Remember, if you want to have a go, now this player has got to have played in England and in MLS. Those are the rules. If you think you know, then get in touch on social media at MLS UK Show. Or if you watch it on YouTube, just stick it in the comments. It'll leave a timestamp. So we'll know you've not cheated and gone to the end. We'll know you've got it. Quite a few sort of Bolton players or links to Bolton have been moving around MLS back to the UK. Tim Ream has joined Charlotte FC, former Bolton player of the season. Scott Arfield plays for Bolton now after signing from Charlotte FC. So there's a few. So no Bolton link yet in this one. I think that would be too easy, but we'll see at the very end of the episode if I get it right.
Elliot Holman, Henry Hewitt. MLS UK Show.
So the MLS UK Show is back, and so is Major League Soccer. It's as if we planned it this way. There has been a weekend of action, but we've got so much to talk about with the league. Now, we're not really going to touch on Leagues Cup. Very complicated issue, that. I mean, it was great. I watched bits of it, but we're just going to concentrate on Major League Soccer. Now, Elliot, rather than discussing the matches at the weekend, we might touch on one or two of them, especially because Atlanta and Orlando lost. So great start for our comeback. But instead, we're going to talk more varied about, say, Supporters Shield, the playoffs and stuff like that. So let's start with the team at the very top of the Supporters Shield standings, and the first team to have clinched a spot in the MLS Cup playoffs, and that is Inter Miami. They beat Cincinnati at the weekend, and they just keep on going, don't they? Everything that's thrown at them, they just bat it away and get 3 more points.
It's possibly one of the worst sentences that you've ever said. You know I hate the word clinched, and you know I'm an Orlando City fan. So I couldn't even concentrate on the rest of the sentence. It's just like, yeah. Well, we had questions, didn't we? We had questions over Miami. Were they going to have enough Messi? Were they going to have enough Suarez? Were they going to have a roster rather than just a couple of players banging in goals up top? And they've answered our questions, and fair play to Miami. First team to confirm a playoff spot. It's been as entertaining as we'd have hoped. Hopefully Messi will be back on the field soon, as feared, and as does come with his, the point of his career, suffering a little bit with injuries. But he's the GOAT. I'm a Messi fan. It kills me that he's at Miami. And I think they've done it in style, and I think they're going to be a real force in the playoffs because they, let's be honest, Messi's going to play in the playoffs, and they're going to have that mentality of just getting the job done. The man wins trophies. He's won everything. So they are really, really going to be one to look out for in the playoffs, and they've proved that top of the Supporters Shield already.
Yeah, they've been, I don't want to say surprising because everyone expected Miami to be here, but I remember us talking at the start of the season and saying, yeah, but can Miami do it when you need to, travel away 2 games in a row when the distance is there? Suarez do it? Is he going to have enough in his enough energy in his tank to do it for a full season? It's MLS is different to the European leagues and maybe a bit more like the South American leagues, but are they going to be used to it? And they've just they're top of the league and they deserve it. And some of the performances, I think, when they've gone to places and won without Messi or Suarez, it shows the depth in the squad they've got. I mean, you just have to look at the weekend when they beat Cincinnati 2-0 up after 5 minutes, but then they got a man sent off. And from there, they're playing Cincinnati. They're not playing in San Jose, who are just happy to be on the same pitch as Inter Miami. They're playing a Cincinnati that are challenging for Supporters Shield themselves, and they saw it through. So yeah, well deserved at their top. I guess if you're looking at challenges for Supporters Shield, if we look at the sort of the league table at the moment, you've got LA Galaxy who are in second, played 27, 52 points, and Miami have got 56 points. Cincinnati played 26, 48 points. LAFC played 24, 47 points. RSL played 26, 44 points. And Columbus, who have only played 23 games, 43 points. Who are the main challengers to Miami then? Who would you say out of them has got the best opportunity to do it?
Well, it's easy to look at LA Galaxy. They're, of course, not a surprise package, but we're, of course, happy to see them up there. Finally, we are seeing these guys. That's David Beckham, of course. I'm talking about LA Galaxy, not Miami. Those guys finally doing it for us, Henry. We've been waiting so long. Every single season we've done this podcast, LA Galaxy have been somewhat of a disappointment. And I think this is the time where they are challenging. I think if you take Messi out of the equation, we would get that. We would finally have that LA Galaxy domination, which is really exciting to see. However, I think it's Columbus and LAFC, finalists, of course, in League's Cup. And they've got games in hand. Columbus have got a lot of games in hand. LAFC can certainly catch up as well. I think they win those and they are contenders as well. They're going to push them all the way. And I hope they do because it'll be so good to watch. It's been a while since I feel like we've had a real ding-dong battle for it. And especially having maybe a 3 or 4 way for it. And I don't want to count out Cincinnati, of course, who have been there and done it and turned things around and are now an incredible side versus what we're used to seeing from them in their early days. So this is going to be a really, really interesting finish to the season.
Yeah, I was thinking that if you look at those 4 teams you mentioned, so you've got Miami, LAFC, LA Galaxy, and Columbus, that's a strong top 4, if you will. If you look at the conference finals of being, if it is Miami v Columbus and LA Galaxy v LAFC, those would be incredible matches. And I think those as a 4 are a very talented. It would be exciting to watch, and they could be for the next few years quite as you put it, ding dong battle between those 4. But I think even if you look further down, I'm looking at the table now. For example, I mean, in the Western Conference, RSL had an awful result of the weekend. How they lost 2-0 to San Jose, I will never know. San Jose, a rock bottom, so how they've pulled that off, God only knows. But if you look in the West, you've got, say, Seattle, who are on this hot streak at the moment. Vancouver are doing well. Then you look in the in the East, and you've got the New York side in 4th and 5th. As you mentioned, Cincinnati, you can't completely rule them out, even though they've now lost the last 4 in the league. So there's some strong teams up there, and I think as we head into the playoffs, this could be one of the most exciting playoffs that we've had in many years, because we've had, like, last year for me was just sort of one-off moments that made it. This could be a real battle between 5 or 6 teams to win it.
Yeah, and I think we were really surprised, and the new playoff format, I still call it the new playoff format, a couple of years in, we weren't particularly happy with it. And I think this is going to be one of those seasons where somebody could come in and finish in that 7th spot, maybe the 9th spot. So 8 places down from someone like Inter Miami at the top, have half the amount of points that the top team have got, the team that wins the Supporters Shield, win a few games and potentially win the whole thing. It's baffling. There's such a huge spread across the league. You know, like you say, San Jose are rock bottom. But I feel like every week I look and Orlando have lost a game and they're seventh. They've got a playoff spot. It feels wrong. Don't want it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it feels like you're robbing teams who have had a really good season of an opportunity to go forward and get some silverware. That's my honest opinion and feelings on it.
Yeah, well, I feel the same about Atlanta, and Atlanta found himself in ninth in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, dismissed the head coach as well. It's just been an awful season for Atlanta. If you would have said we'd be a place above Philadelphia at this point with about 9 games to go, I would have definitely taken that. I wouldn't have expected Philadelphia in 10th. But yeah, I think I mean, we've mentioned the teams at the very top. Orlando, I think you'd be far more disappointed than me as an Atlanta fan that your position. I mean, it's just Orlando. There was so much hope going into this season for you guys, maybe challenging Miami, and it's just not quite happened, has it? And a 3-0 defeat at the weekend to SKC. I mean, just a quick one on Orlando before we move on. You know, obviously, as we've been doing this podcast for many years, you have very opinionated thoughts on whether it's the head coach, whether it's what the front office or the back office are doing. Where do you look at Orlando at the moment? What is the plan? What's happening there?
Well, for the last year, I've not really been satisfied that Pareja is the best option, and I think that remains true. Put together a very good run at the end of last season, which completely saved him and us. The front office have delivered a very good team, in my opinion, for the last 2-3 years, and we haven't got the job done. So I think it's a pretty simple one, to be honest with you. Well,
I guess Pareja has got 9 games to save his job then in Elliot's eyes at Orlando. I want to talk about another head coach who, if you've been listening to the MLS UK show for the last 12 months, and apologies, there's not been many episodes, but you would have noticed that Elliot was very opinionated when Charlotte FC hired former Norwich City head coach Dean Smith. You said it wasn't going to work. He's a rubbish manager. And, he finds himself at the moment 4 points above Orlando, but in 6th, comfortably in the playoffs. Have you been surprised with what Dean Smith has done at Charlotte?
Well, he's found his level, hasn't he? I think is what's happened here. Premier League's the best league in the world, and he was relegated. And I think there's absolutely no hesitation with any single Norwich City fan that he is up there with one of the worst coaches we've ever had. So, yeah, to see a little bit of success is a surprise, although he had moderate success at Aston Villa, of course. But, yeah, you know, I think there's people who 3-4 years ago would have been extremely surprised to see him managing in MLS. We love MLS. There's nothing against the league, but we don't have, and historically haven't had anyway, maybe that's changing. We haven't had the best players and the best managers at the peak of their career. We still have very few of those. Lionel Messi is still one of the best players in the world. Of course he is, but he's not at the peak of his career. I think he's come to MLS to prove himself. He needs that. He needs that playoff spot. He needs to deliver with Charlotte, because if you sat him down and said, Dean, be really, really honest, where do you want to be? He'll say he wants to manage in Europe and he wants to manage in the Premier League.
I suppose, it depends how he does in the playoffs with Charlotte. If he can get them in the top 4, then maybe they have an opportunity to get quite far into the playoffs. I don't think anyone expects Charlotte to win the playoffs, but, if he can build and have a solid season, then, yeah, you never know for next year what could happen. Another Englishman who is managing in MLS at the moment, and after Gary Smith was dismissed from Nashville, I think there's only 2 at the moment. I may have one may have slipped my mind, but Phil Neville at Portland Timbers, they find themselves in 7th in the West. However, they've scored the most goals in that conference, and they've conceded, I think, the 4th most as well. So if you want excitement, go and watch Portland Timbers. They drew 4-4 at the weekend. What do you make about what Phil Neville's doing at the moment?
Well, away form is not the one for Neville. I think he's lost 7 games away from home. So the travel, not his friend, not the club's friend. Portland, for me, historically, and when I say historically, I mean in the time that I've been watching MLS in the last 10 years, have been an extremely good side. I found it really puzzling when they went for Phil Neville. I think it screamed mediocrity, and I think he's kind of delivering mediocrity. I sound really harsh, but I actually think it's really fair. I think they're a massive club, and they should have appointed somebody of a bigger stature and a bigger experience than Phil Neville. I think it sounds really harsh, and I feel bad. And I don't have as much against him as I do Dean Smith, certainly. But I feel like he could certainly have brought something to San Jose, who are really struggling. Portland, I just think they could have dreamt bigger. Yeah,
I feel Portland just need consistency at the moment. Obviously, you look at their Cascadia rivals, Seattle, and I mean, there's not many teams who have got more or as much consistency as they've got with their head coach. And even though Seattle, I think they started with 1 win in 9, they've turned it around. And, I think you can perhaps look at, say, an SKC who are struggling again, despite the fact they beat Orlando at the weekend. With Peter Vermees, and you can look and go, yeah, it's probably they need a change there at some point. Seattle, their consistency, you look at them, and to an extent, Philadelphia. I mean, they've struggled this year, but on the whole, they've done well over the last few years. There's a lot to be said for it. So whether Phil Neville's going to come in and be there for the next 10 years and build something, I don't quite know. I mean, Phil Neville seems to be enjoying his time in MLS in the US, but whether he's looking for a move back to the UK, we don't know. So I think for Portland, I kind of agree with you. I think unless Phil Neville has said to them, I want to be here for the long run, it's probably worth them looking at a head coach that he's going to be there for the next 5 or 6 years and build something, rather than someone who's going to be in for a few years.
Yeah, agreed. And I think every year there's always a team that surprises you. Philadelphia, definitely one of those this year. A little bit disappointing. Portland have definitely been a lot better than they have in the last few years. And there are some surprises. I think St. Louis, in their debut season, we thought they're not going to do anything. And they really, really, completely proved us wrong. And this season have fallen away massively.
So before we go into your game, Elliot, and the result of the game with the changing name, let's talk about the teams at the very bottom. It's not been a good season for San Jose, St. Louis, DC, Nashville. Where to start?
Yeah, where to start? I mean, one team that will never surprise you is Chicago. Consistently, in my MLS experience, have just existed down the bottom of the table. It's really bizarre, isn't it? I think they're the only team that have just been there every single year. And it certainly feels that way anyway. So that's less of a surprise. But yeah, the likes of DC, New England, who have, in the last few years, a few years ago, were a really good side. Philadelphia, even as far as Atlanta. There's been some really terrible seasons. And they aren't normally the teams that have them. There's someone's always got to be down the bottom, but some of those are definitely a surprise.
Yeah. If you look in the East, I mean, it's really tight actually, considering that Atlanta in 9th, and if the results don't go their way, could be bottom, but in 15th by the end of the weekend or in a few weeks. It's really tight, but yeah, you're right. You look at some teams there. I mean, DC United, for me, I watched the goals that they conceded on Saturday against Dallas, and it was just dreadful. The defense, I mean, you can have one of them, maybe two if you've had a bad day, but all 4 goals were very poor to concede, and the fact that they did it in the first half as well just showed that something's not right there. Maybe check out DC United Kingdom, his podcast, because he'll explain it better than we do. But I think they won 2 before the break, but they've just gone back to a very poor defeat, and they almost got a draw out of it, which would have been, for Dallas's sake, would have been an awful result if they'd managed to lose or draw that. Nashville, they've got a new manager come in, but they've lost the last 6 now in MLS, so they're just ready for the end of the season. I think BJ Callahan's going to come in and just steady the ship till the end of the season, then look to next year. And like you said, Chicago Fire have just been consistently poor. What did you make of Shaqiri leaving? That happened over the summer.
Yeah, a bizarre one, because you kind of expected him to kind of finish out his career in MLS, but maybe a mark of disappointment on how Chicago's seasons have panned out. Do you think?
Yeah, perhaps. He showed he got his every 2 years he scores a worldie, done he, in a major tournament. He did that in the Euros in the summer, and people remember Shaqiri and look and go, oh, he's playing in MLS, and then naturally will ask me or you, how's he doing? And you're like, he's not doing that. He's had a very underwhelming time in MLS, and it came to an end. And I don't think Chicago are any better off now than they were when he came in. We saw him come in and thought, right, this could be the guy that grabs Chicago and takes them up into the playoffs, and it's very poor on that on that front. And then you look at New England as well, disappointing. They had a head coach come in who's got bags of experience in MLS, and he's not managed to do it so far. But then again, they won 5-0 at Montreal at the weekend, which again was a very weird result amongst some other weird results at the weekend.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about any more results from the weekend, if I'm honest with you. I'm looking at SKC down the bottom there and thinking, how has that happened?
Yeah, well, I think San Jose beating RSL trumps that, so you can get away with it slightly. But to be honest, obviously we're looking at San Jose at the moment. They're going to be the first team that is eliminated, followed by St. Louis, maybe Sporting KC, and half the league in the East. In the next few weeks, it'll be fascinating to see how many drop at once in the East, because everyone's so clunked together at the bottom of that league. Yeah. It could be that one weekend just knocks about 5 of them out.
Yeah, it's certainly been tight this year. Everyone's either determined to win the Supporters Shield or determined to just be eliminated and go on holiday. So it's going to be interesting, and certainly the teams that don't make it in the playoffs, you could finish 10th, but you could finish rock bottom. So a lot to play for outside of the playoffs as well, because we know how important it is that you show intent when you're trying to attract new players in the off season over the winter, and you want to say, look, we nearly made the playoffs last season. Can you come and help us make it next year? If you're San Jose and you're rock bottom, it's really difficult.
Do you agree with what we've said? Do you think we've been too harsh on some people? Do you think we've not been harsh enough on some clubs as well? Get in touch at MLS UK Show on social media, or stick your opinions in the comments on YouTube. You normally do anyway.
The MLS UK Show.
Right, we're back for the final part of this episode of the MLS UK Show. And Elliot, you've got a game for us all to play.
Yes, welcome along to the middle name game. I told you that our player we've selected on the game with the changing name, their middle name is Roy. And I told you that would have significance, because I'm going to read you some full names of MLS players. For each one, you will have 2 choices on their middle name. You have to tell me which one is the correct one. It's the middle name game. Play along at home. Up first, it's Timothy Michael Ream, or is it Timothy Frederick Ream?
Oh, I'd like to say I should know this with his links to Bolton Wanderers, but I couldn't tell you any of Bolton's players' middle names. Apart from JJ Kocher, I think his was Augustine, but JJ never played in MLS, so that's pointless information. I'm going to go with Timothy Michael Ream.
It's the correct answer. Timothy Michael Ream. Well done. Off the mark. Up next, is it Emil Swanderick Forsberg or is it Emil Peter Forsberg?
If it's not Swanderick, then I want to know where you've pulled that out from. So I'm going to go with Swanderick.
Incorrect. I don't know either. I wrote these earlier and I was like, what even is a Swanderick? Yeah, no idea.
I'm glad for him. I'm glad for
up
him
next,
that his name is Peter.
Is it Miles Jerome Robinson or Miles Gordon Robinson?
Jerome, surely.
Incorrect. It's Gordon.
Gordon, wow. You don't hear of many Americans called Gordon, actually.
You don't. Up next, is it Brooks Howard Lennon or Brooks Helen Lennon?
Oh, come on. He can't be Helen. He's got to be Howard.
You can't, mate. It's 2024. You can't say that. The answer is Brooks Howard Lennon.
There we go. Listen, everyone can be called whatever they want, but for Brooks Lennon, yeah, it was.
Doesn't
always
look like
gonna
a
be
Helen. Finally, is it? And this player normally shortens their first name, so this does just sound funny anyway. Is it Benjamin Stanley Michel, or is it Benjamin Bruce Michel?
Bruce, come on. Give me Bruce.
Bruce. Shout out to Matilda. It's actually Stanley.
Oh.
Benji Stanley Michel.
Some great names.
Yeah.
Brilliant. My middle name's Richard. I wish it was something more exotic.
Dick.
And well, let's leave it at that. There you go. That's what I'm going to call myself. I'm going to change my passport to say.
That's what it says
Henry
most of the comments anyway.
Yeah. Well, Elliot, that was a great game. You'll be back next time with another game. If you've got a suggestion for a game, and get in touch. Or if you'd like to know more middle names, or if you know a footballer's middle name, which is, I don't know, as funny as say a Gordon or a Stanley or something,
Helen.
Then or a Helen, then yeah, get in touch. Right, that's almost it for this episode of the MLS UK show. But before we go, it's time to reveal the name and the game and the changing name.
Yeah, so their middle name was Roy. Told you that. They were born in Nantwich, and they played for Crew Alexandra. Moved to Nantwich Town on loan in 2008. 2012, Aston Villa. Then they played for Burnley in 2017, and they now play in MLS. Do you know the club, Henry?
Is it Charlotte FC?
It is Charlotte FC. Friend of Dean Smith, and therefore not a friend of mine. It is
Ashley Westwood.
Ashley Roy Westwood.
Brilliant. He's not a Dick, he's a Roy.
He's a Roy, yeah.
There we go. So well done if you got that right as well. I've got to admit, I got it from the Burnley to do MLS link. But yeah, you have to make it a tad, not too much, but just a tad bit harder for me next week, Elliot.
I've got some up my sleeve, don't you worry.
Well, that's it for this episode of the MLS UK show. Remember, if you have enjoyed it, then thank you very much. If you're going to come back, then thank you very much. But if you want to be reminded of when we release an episode on the podcast provider of your choice, then you need to click the follow button. And if you click the follow button while you're there, why don't you leave us a rating? But Elliot, there's one rule and one rule only.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this. We're in contention for this to be completely ruined. Your review must be LA Galaxy style. 5 stars only. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel we're going to get a load of people get in touch when LA Galaxy finally win that next MLS Cup and go, what are you going to do now?
6
and
stars
we'll think
only.
of something, don't worry. If you're watching on YouTube, then click the notification bell, subscribe as well, because that really helps, and like the video. We'd really appreciate that. But for now, and before we're back, and we promise we'll be back a lot sooner than the 4 months of what it was since our last episode. But for now, I've been Henry Hewitt.
And I've been Elliot Holman.
See ya.